Episode 4 Behind the Line. I'm your host, KC. Follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. If you're listening to this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you click the notification bell. If you're listening on other platforms, SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, hit the like button and be sure to leave a comment in the section below. What a Monday night football game we just had in New Orleans. Saints end up winning 30-28. The best game of the fucking weekend by far. The NFL had some good games this weekend, but there were also a lot of stinkers, a lot of penalties yesterday while I was watching Red Zone, a lot of sloppy football, which is to be expected in week 1. But the Saints and the Texans just put on a fucking show. Saints were leading 27-21, late fourth quarter. Deshaun Watson comes up with two of the most clutch pass plays I've ever seen. Leads the Texans down the field. 2 plays, touchdown. The fucking Texans missed the extra point, and the Saints roughed the kicker. Something they did all night, shooting themselves in the fucking foot with penalties. But then, Drew Brees does what Drew Brees does. With about 30 seconds left, one timeout, leads the Saints down the field. Will Lutz kicks a 58-yard field goal, wins the game. Unbelievable Monday Night Football game. But I wanted to talk about something here, and I hadn't planned on talking about this until I watched this game tonight. If you follow the Saints, then you know that us Saints fans have this belief, kind of this conspiracy that the NFL kind of has it out for the Saints. Mainly Roger Goodell. And to me, it really, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any stretch, but there's just too much that has happened to Sean Payton and the New Orleans Saints under Goodell's tenure to really not question things. It all started with the Bounty Gate scandal. Everybody knows about that. The 2009 Super Bowl team. They were putting wagers out on big hits, big plays, interceptions. And, you know, in the grand scheme of things, who really fucking cares? I mean, these guys are paid to hit each other. And, you know, everybody knows what happened. Goodell bans Sean Payton for a year, takes away draft picks. It really set the Saints back several years. You know, Sean Payton came back in 2013. They had a good run. But for a 3-year stretch, the Saints were 7-9 every year. The lack of the draft picks really hurt them. And then everybody knows what happened last year. I mean, there's absolutely no questioning that non-pass interference call in that NFC Championship game. The Saints should have been in the Super Bowl. I think if the Saints played the Patriots last year in the Super Bowl, they win. But tonight, before the game started, ESPN had the head official from last year's Super Bowl. He's retired now, working for the network. I don't remember the fucking guy's name. And he was talking about how critical it was for the officiating in the league to improve, and specifically in New Orleans tonight, how it was critical for these officials to have 0 mistakes. I'll give the officials credit. They called a pretty good game. But there was a glaring error at the end of the first half. Texans are up. I believe they're up 14-3. It's under a minute to go. Saints are driving the ball, starting at their own 25. With about 46 seconds to go, Drew Brees hits a pass to Michael Thomas. It's 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, something like that. He lands right on the first down marker. If I remember correctly, I believe the officials gave the Saints a first down. Within that time frame, the clock had ran down from when the play ended at 46 seconds to about 26 seconds. The officials decide they want to review it. Under 2 minutes, they review the play. No big deal. They end up verifying the Saints got a first down. The problem with it is they assessed the Saints a 10-second runoff. Now, the Saints had a fucking timeout. They assessed a 10-second runoff from 26 seconds to go instead of 46 seconds to go. Number one, I don't know why there'd be a fucking 10-second runoff anyway. The Saints didn't challenge the call. The booth did. So instead of the Saints having almost a minute to go from midfield, they've got 16 fucking seconds left. It just makes you wonder, because this type of stuff happens to the Saints all the fucking time. If you are an avid Saints fan or you watch a lot of the Saints, you know what the fuck I'm talking about. This happens all the time. I've never been a big fan of Roger Goodell ever since the Bountygate scandal. Now, Roger Goodell is not liked by very many people at all. A lot of players have problems with him. But it just makes you wonder, with all of this stuff that continually happens to the Saints, if there's not something going on behind the scenes. I'm not saying there is, but it just makes you wonder. All right, enough about that. Every Tuesday on the show, I'm going to do a segment called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I'm going to go over the weekend and pick out what was good, what was bad, what was ugly. So let's go ahead and get to it. The good this weekend. We had a good weekend with our college football bets. End of the weekend 2-1. Actually, we should have been 3-0. Clemson allowed a touchdown late in the fourth quarter in garbage time. Once again, fucking us with a backdoor cover. Same thing happened last weekend. Clemson dominated Texas A&M. I mean, this game really wasn't even close. You know, it's really insane, the disparity of talent in college football. Texas A&M comes into this game supposedly the 12th best team in the country, and Clemson completely overpowered them on both sides of the ball. Another thing, Joe Burrow at LSU. This kid is the fucking truth. Senior quarterback was amazing Saturday night in a hostile environment in Austin. Threw for 471 yards, 4 touchdowns. But what impressed me the most was his late 61-yard touchdown with about 2:27 to go in the fourth quarter, which put the game out of reach. Texas ended up scoring a late touchdown, but we still got the LSU cover with the 6.5. I failed to mention this on Friday, but it's extremely important to jump on these games early when betting them. Preferably, at minimum, 24 hours early. If you waited until Saturday to bet LSU, the line had jumped up to 7. So you pushed instead of winning. LSU ends up winning by 7 points. You got them at 6.5. You win the bet. After watching this game Saturday, I feel like LSU is the team to beat in the SEC this year. Could possibly be the best team in the country. Dominant defense, which is always the case in LSU. But for the first time in over a decade, LSU has a legitimate NFL caliber quarterback under center. I haven't been impressed with Alabama so far, but it's kind of hard to tell. They haven't played anyone yet. Won't play a good team until early November when they play LSU. Bama plays Texas A&M in October. I believe it's October 12th. But as we saw last weekend, Texas A&M just isn't on the level of an Alabama or a Clemson. All right, for the last of the goods, this one might actually surprise you. I've been harsh on this guy and his team throughout August and early September. But Dak Prescott was phenomenal yesterday. Fucking phenomenal. Dallas went down 7-0 early in the game to the Giants. Then Dak and Zeke just completely took over. Dak had, in my opinion, one of the best games of his career yesterday. Threw for 405 yards, 4 touchdowns, completed 78% of his passes. I haven't seen this level of play from Dak Prescott maybe ever. He was that good yesterday. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm still not sold on Dak Prescott. The New York Giants defense is fucking atrocious. That was a pitiful performance by the New York Giants yesterday. We're going to get to Eli Manning a little bit later on, but there were a lot of people kissing Dak Prescott's ass yesterday on Twitter, acting like he was the second coming of Peyton Manning. You would have thought that Skip Bayless had just seen the Messiah return. let's slow down a minute, guys. I mean, it's just one game. Let's see what happens the rest of the year. But it's obvious that Dak Prescott deserves a contract extension. Like we've talked about here before, I mean, he's definitely underpaid, undervalued in terms of his current contract. But just because he had one great game against a hapless New York Giants team does not mean that I'm sold on Dak Prescott or this Dallas Cowboys team. Now, granted, the Cowboys are extremely talented. Good defense. But the defense really is predicated on Sean Lee staying healthy. The Dallas defense just is different if Sean Lee's not in the lineup. I still don't believe the Cowboys are a playoff team, but they'll be an interesting story to follow throughout the year. All right, let's get to the bads of this weekend. There was a few of them. First off, I want to preface this by saying that I have a lot of respect for Eli Manning. When Ben McAdoo benched him in 2017, I thought that was completely fucking uncalled for. I don't care how poorly Eli Manning was playing. And he was awful in 2017. Eli Manning has been awful for several years. But you never bench Eli fucking Manning for a guy like Geno Smith, which is what Ben McAdoo did at the time. The reason why he got fucking fired as well. He should have been fucking fired. With that being said, the situation in New York with the Giants now is different. If you didn't watch the game yesterday and you just looked at Eli Manning's stat line, you wouldn't think that he had a bad game. 306 yards, 1 touchdown, completed over 68% of his passes. Not a bad stat line. But this was a dreadful performance. The Giants really couldn't move the ball after their early touchdown in the first quarter. Eli Manning, it's no secret, he's been on the decline for years. And it doesn't look like he's ever going to be the quarterback he was during his 2 Super Bowl runs. He's always been inconsistent, but he's been consistently bad for the past several seasons. In my opinion, it's time for the Daniel Jones era to start in New York. The Giants aren't making the playoffs. So why not go ahead and put Daniel Jones in and let's see what he does? They did it late yesterday in the fourth quarter when the game was out of reach. But really, there's no reason for Daniel Jones not to be starting in week 2 for the New York Giants. Second bad of the weekend. Damn, did the Pittsburgh Steelers look like shit Sunday night. When I was giving my NFL bets out Saturday and I saw that the Steelers were getting 5.5 points against New England, I thought this was a lock. I really did. I thought it was one of the better picks of week 1. Thought it was a no-brainer. I was fucking wrong. Big Ben and the Steelers forgot to fucking show up. They were humiliated on Sunday Night Football. This was as bad of a start as you could have if you're Mike Tomlin, whose job's already in jeopardy in Pittsburgh, almost fucking fired at the end of last season. Now, I'm not jumping off the Steelers bandwagon just yet. I still think the Steelers are a playoff team. I think the Steelers are actually my favorite to win the AFC North Division. But Big Ben looked rusty to me last night. Really struggled throwing the ball downfield. I think that'll be corrected as the weeks go on. I also feel like the Steelers' defense will be better than what we saw last night. So I'm not jumping off the Steelers yet, but that was an embarrassing performance for Pittsburgh last night. Last one for the bads of the weekend, and that was my NFL plays for the week. Started off strong in the early games, covered with Tennessee and Buffalo. Carolina was disappointing in my opinion. We went into the late game windows. We were up 2-1. 2 wins, 1 loss. Then it just completely fell apart from there. I mean, the Chargers, what the fuck happened there? 24-9, you're up in the fourth quarter. You let Jacoby Brissett wheel the Colts back into the game. Phillip Rivers had an atrocious interception in the red zone in the fourth quarter. I mean, this game should have been covered by the Chargers. And it's my fault. we had the 6.5 points. I should have told you to buy the hook down to 6. We would have at least pushed. That's on me. But not a good start to our NFL season. Like I said, September is always hard to bet football. 2-3 start to the NFL season. We did even up our college record at 3-3, so that got a little bit better. All right, the uglies of the weekend. Damn it, did I hit the nail on the head Saturday when we were talking about the Cleveland Browns. I said that all this preseason hype, all the shit talking, Baker Mayfield being the quote-unquote polarizing guy that he is, I said this was a recipe for disaster and it would blow up in their face. I didn't know it would be this early in the year, but they got their asses kicked by Tennessee Sunday afternoon. Here's the thing, especially in the NFL. When you're a team that has all this hype and you haven't earned it, and you are in the media through the offseason, in the preseason, and you're talking all this shit, you are going to get the best from every team that you play all year. And that's what the Browns got out of the Titans on Sunday. Tennessee rocked Baker Mayfield the entire game. They were in his face from the time that ball kicked off in the first quarter. Forced him into 3 ugly interceptions, a complete and total dominant performance by the Titans. Winning by 30 points, easily covering the 5.5. They were getting 5.5 points. The Browns put together really one drive all game. The rest of the time, it was all Tennessee. Stadium was fucking packed in Cleveland. And you could hear the fucking boo birds in the second half of that game. 9 minutes left in the game, and people were beginning to file out of the stadium. Typical Cleveland Browns football. Why anyone is surprised by this is beyond me. And what's with fucking Odell Beckham? Wearing a $300,000 watch during the fucking game. Really? Was he showing up to a fucking rap video? Or was this a professional football game? I don't know. It's fucking ridiculous. Now, I'm not sold on this Browns team. Big reason why is Freddie Kitchens. Now, this redneck guy is completely unproven in the National Football League. Hell, he was only an offensive coordinator the last half of last year. The only reason he got this head coaching job in Cleveland was because Baker Mayfield liked him. That's not how winning teams choose their head coach. Now, I've heard several reports that he's a quote-unquote player's coach. Now, being a player's coach can sometimes work in the NBA. Where it doesn't work is the NFL. Now, your coach has to be the leader of the franchise. He's got to be the guy holding people accountable. Same with your quarterback. You got to have both of those guys in lockstep with each other. You don't have that in either spot in Cleveland. Now, I'm not saying that Baker Mayfield and Freddie Kitchens aren't seeing eye to eye. But do you really see either one of those guys holding people accountable? I think it could be a very, very long season for fans of the Cleveland Browns. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to be this bad all year and get blown out by 30 points. I think they'll win some games. But I didn't pick them to make the playoffs before the season started. And after watching that performance on Sunday, my opinion hasn't changed whatsoever. Next, I have no idea how Jameis Winston still has a job in the NFL. Now, this guy, he's been an absolute disaster the past 4 seasons. Now, he enters this 2019 season on the final year of his rookie contract. You hear no talks out of Tampa of an extension coming his way. You know, in Dallas, all we hear about is Dak Prescott's contract extension. His big raise. Deservedly so. You don't hear shit like that about Jameis Winston. Basically, this is a make or break fucking season for him. He fails to perform this year. He's definitely out at Tampa and very well could be out of the NFL. I mean, he might pick up a backup gig somewhere, but with his reputation of being a fucking asshole and a nuisance, even that could be in jeopardy. A lot of teams might pass on him because he'll be a distraction. So with his career at stake, with everything he's got on the line, you'd think he would come out at home in week 1 against a decent San Francisco defense. Not the best in the league, but not the worst by far. Nothing special. And you would think that Jameis Winston would have the game of his career. Instead, what we saw was one of the worst performances of the entire weekend. If it wasn't for the fucking Miami Dolphins, and we'll get to them in a second. If it wasn't for the Miami Dolphins, Jameis Winston's shitty-ass performance would be the worst thing that we saw all weekend long. Check out this stat line. 194 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, quarterback rating of 45.4. I thought the Tampa defense played well on Sunday. Really kept them in the game. They had no business being in this game, but the defense kept them in the game. This game was lost on the shoulders of Jameis Winston. Turnovers in the red zone. 2 interceptions returned for touchdowns. 1 late in the fourth quarter where the Bucs could have put together a drive to tie the game. This is absolutely inexcusable at this stage in Jameis Winston's career. I mean, like I said a minute ago, he's been fucking terrible since he entered the league. And then you come out in week 1 in a contract year, and this is your performance to open the season. Then to top it off, I'm watching after the game, and the players, all across the field to congratulate each other, blah, blah, blah. Jameis Winston is all smiles. He's on the field congratulating the 49ers, which I'm fine with that. You want to show class and sportsmanship. But his demeanor about it just rubbed me the wrong way. He had this demeanor like all is okay in the world. No problems over here. I'm fine. Don't worry. Everything's all good. When Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, they have a bad game, lose the game for their team, you see solemn faces at the end of the game. Yeah, they'll congratulate their opponents, but they're not smiling and taking pictures and autographing jerseys. They're fucking pissed off. I didn't see that from Jameis Winston yesterday. He's as happy as he could be. Well, good for him. I hope that motherfucker keeps the smile on his face. He's going to need it next year when he's standing in the fucking unemployment line. Because at this rate, he's not going to have a job in the NFL. Now, the ugliest thing by far that I saw this weekend was the performance of the Miami Dolphins. Now, NFL teams have been blown out before. It happens every year. You don't see it in the rate that you see it in college football. But we get some blowouts in the NFL every year. But what we saw Sunday in Miami was fucking ugly. They made Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens look like world beaters. They made them look like the best team in the fucking league. This game was over by the second quarter. Rarely in an NFL game does a game become out of reach that quickly. Miami scored a touchdown in the second quarter. You'd have thought they won the fucking Super Bowl the way they were celebrating. Now, Miami traded away all their best players before the season started. Some were traded the week before week 1. Now, I saw reports this morning where there were many players in the locker room in Miami that were just furious after the game, and rightfully so. They had every reason to be upset. But the whispers coming out of Miami are that the coaching staff and management has already decided to basically mail this season in. That they're intentionally tanking for the number 1 pick in next year's draft. I got to thinking about this. I can't think of one example where an NFL team has intentionally tanked a season, especially this early. I mean, we're in week fucking 1, and the talks of tanking in Miami were happening in the preseason. Now, we hear about it in the NBA all the time. I mean, everybody knows about the process that Philadelphia went through to get to where they are today. But every year in the NBA, you hear about teams tanking to try to get better odds in the draft lottery. The league has done a lot in recent years to kind of try to dissuade teams from doing that by evening out the odds in the lottery, but it still happens. But you don't hear about this in the NFL. I mean, the way the NFL is designed, a 4-12 team can be a Super Bowl contender in 1 to 2 years. Just look at the Rams. The Rams were god-awful in Jared Goff's rookie season. 2 years later, they're in the Super Bowl, getting their ass kicked by the Patriots. But back to the Miami locker room. I don't blame these players at all for wanting to get the fuck out of Miami. You know, careers are short in the NFL. We all know that. I mean, these guys have a very limited time frame to make money and to contend for a championship. And this Miami team is staring down the barrel of an 0-16 year. I mean, that's a real possibility. So I don't blame these guys at all for wanting to get the fuck out of there. All right, now that's it for the good, the bad, and the ugly for the weekend. I want to talk about Antonio Brown real quick. We've been covering a lot here on the podcast. I had already lost all respect for Antonio Brown after he posted that phone call between himself and John Gruden. We talked about that Saturday. I thought that was just fucking disgraceful. But now, I'm even more disgusted with Antonio Brown, if that could even be possible. Does anyone find it the least bit strange at how quickly he signed with New England after the Raiders had finally had enough of his bullshit and cut him? I mean, it's almost as if this was the plan all along. That's what I believe anyway. And this is all just too coincidental. I mean, I told you at the beginning of the podcast, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. But this is too coincidental for me. I feel like Antonio Brown intentionally forced the Raiders' hand and got himself released in Oakland, just so he could sign with New England. Now remember, AB did not decide on his own to go to Oakland. The Steelers traded him there after they got tired of his shit. I'm about to detail a list of incidents that's happened in the offseason. Now, you listen to them, you tell me if this is mere coincidence or if you think this was an intentional plan all along for AB to get himself ousted in Oakland. August 7th, AB suffers frostbite due to a cryotherapy chamber and is unable to practice. All right, you know, you don't hear about that situation every day, but kind of understandable, no big deal. But after his feet were healed, he still refused to come to practice. He had the whole helmet issue with the NFL front office, where he basically refused to comply with rules regarding his helmet. Said he wasn't playing unless he could wear his helmet, the one he wanted to wear, which coincidentally was out of compliance with league rules. Even threatened to retire at one point. Ridiculous, I know, but as you know, it gets better. August 12th, AB returns to Raiders practice after missing 2 weeks. Doesn't stick around for long, though. August 18th, Raiders general manager Mike Mayock publicly calls out AB, saying, quote, "It's time for him to be all in or all out," end quote. Obviously, at this point, Oakland management is beginning to get fed up with Antonio Brown and his bullshit. He's starting to wear out his welcome in Oakland at this point. August 20th, Brown was given a 1-year grace period to phase out the helmet he had been wearing his entire career after his first helmet grievance. Now, he eventually returned to practice with an approved helmet on August 20th, but then filed a second grievance regarding the grace period. 5 days later, he lost his second grievance with the league. September 4th, Brown settles on a helmet for the season. Thank God, the whole helmet controversy is over. We can move on. Talk about football. Get him on the field. Not going to happen. We all know that. Instead, what he does is he goes and posts a photo of his fines for missed practices to his Instagram account, which totaled 54 grand. And then we had the whole story of him and his fight with Mike Mayock at that practice that Wednesday. They were fighting about the fines and all the shit. And then it's reported that Antonio Brown calls Mike Mayock a cracker and unloaded several curse words at him. Now, the fight didn't get physical. Just, some racial slurs here and there. But let me ask you something. If Mike Mayock had called AB the N-word, what do you think would have happened to him? He would have fucking been fired on the spot. The media would have drug his fucking ass, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. His reputation would have been ruined. Yet, how come when Antonio Brown uses a racial slur towards Mike Mayock, it's pretty much a fucking non-story? It makes no sense to me. But I digress. September 6th, AB returns to practice. This is the point where the Raiders are coming out and saying that he's going to play on Monday against Denver. We're not going to suspend him anymore. Everything's all good in Oakland. And then, as we all know, Saturday, September 7th, AB releases the phone call with him and John Gruden, asks for his release from the Raiders, and is eventually granted that. They take back his signing bonus, and they grant him his release. And it's not fucking hours later. He's not allowed to sign with the Patriots till like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But I get the notification on my phone about 11 o'clock Saturday morning. AB has been released by the Raiders. 30 minutes later, reports AB to sign with the Patriots. Now, how fucking coincidental is all this? All of these incidents, all of this happened in less than 30 days. In my opinion, this guy never wanted to be in Oakland. But instead of being a man, being professional, handling it the right way, he instead goes and he acts like a bitch about it. He did everything in his power to get released. Now, if you don't want to be in Oakland, why not just ask for a fucking trade? Would the Raiders have agreed to that? Maybe. I mean, I doubt they would have initially. They would have tried to work it out to keep him there. I mean, they did trade for him. Didn't give up much for him, but still. You trade for a guy, you want to try to work it out. But eventually, they would have had to have acquiesced. I mean, why would you want to keep a guy in your locker room that obviously does not want to be there? So I'm sure the Raiders would have traded him by the trade deadline. But the real kicker for me in this, and I've said it before, was the recorded phone call. I mean, that's one of the most disgraceful things that I've seen in the NFL. I have a lot of respect for John Gruden. I really do. And I feel like what Antonio Brown did to him was basically the equivalent of spitting in his face. But now watch. So you got AB in New England. Under the tutelage of Bill Belichick, Tom Brady. We won't hear a peep out of this guy the rest of the year. Now, I'm not a Patriots hater by any stretch. There's a lot of Patriots haters out there. I'm not one of them. But these contract negotiations were going down while he was still under contract in Oakland. But honestly, I feel like New England, the Patriots organization, is the best place for Antonio Brown right now. Brady and Belichick aren't going to deal with his bullshit. I think at this point in his career, he needs this type of leadership. New England has shown in the past that they can take on degenerate troublemakers in the NFL and then get the most out of their talent while keeping them out of trouble. Now, it doesn't always work. There are cases where it's blown up in their face, but not to the extent of what just happened in Oakland or what happened last year in Pittsburgh. You start trouble in New England, they just fucking get rid of you. They don't put up with shit. But they did take on Randy Moss, rejuvenated his career late in his career. Same thing with LeGarrette Blount. Trying to do it now with Josh Gordon if he could get on the fucking field. You haven't heard much from Josh Gordon, though, since he signed with New England. You know, when he was in Cleveland, in and out of trouble all the time. Ever since he's been in New England, we hadn't heard shit from him. We'll see how it goes, but I really feel like this is going to work out, and it's going to be huge for New England. I mean, the Patriots were already loaded. The defense is fucking really good. I think the defense is the best that they've had in years. Secondary, really good. Now you add Antonio Brown to an offense that was already tough to defend. I mean, they lost Gronk in the offseason. He retired. But I saw reports today where people were talking about he could be back this year, possibly by November. We'll see about that. If they get Gronk back with Antonio Brown and Josh Gordon, I mean, this could be an unbelievable offense. Already is. I mean, this Patriots team is scary. Likely on their way to another Super Bowl. Now, I know the Chiefs are good, but I think in Kansas City, once again, the defense is going to be their Achilles heel. And Patrick Mahomes was a little shaky yesterday. You know, he got his leg rolled up in that second quarter when he was going down for a sack, and he was limping a lot in that game. And I don't think it's a major injury, but just something to keep an eye on. But the Chiefs' offensive line is fucking awful. I mean, that offensive line yesterday was fucking awful. The Jaguars were up Mahomes' ass all day long. You know, he's going to take a fucking beating this season. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes in New England. I originally had the Chiefs coming out of the AFC before the season started, but I think with this AB deal that New England's got to be the obvious favorite. I mean, we'll see how they look in week 2. See if Antonio Brown can get back to doing what he does best, which is play football and stay out of the media, stay out of the headlines. But if he does, I think the Patriots are the team to beat in the AFC. All right, guys, that's all for today. I'm going to get the fuck out of here. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed the podcast, hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. Appreciate the support. Any support I can get, I appreciate it. I'll be back on Friday with my college football bets of the week. Saturday, of course, I'll be back with NFL news and the bets of the week. Have a good week. I'll see you this weekend.